What's up, YouTubers? It's Jay Dreamers, and the following video is going to be part information, part interpretation, and part speculation. So let's jump right into it. First of all, who is this guy? Right? I saw this guy. He's supposedly he's a little mummified guy who's probably could sit in the palm of my hand like a little Tom Thumb, and it's mummified, and people have done X-ray tests on it, and you can see like the bones inside the skin and everything. And I think the world that we live in right now would immediately jump to, oh, that's a hoax, that's fake, etc., etc., because anything of fantasy culture, anything of legend, anything of myth, anything of fiction automatically just gets pushed aside as ridiculous in our world that we live in today. But as I've said in many of my videos before, I think that there was once a complete painting or picture, and that picture of our history has been broken down into tiny little fragments and pieces like a puzzle, and it falls to some of us, if we'd like to take some of those connecting pieces and start putting that picture back together through little hints that we found through information, through interpretation, and speculation. And imagination also, I think, is important. Now, when I saw this little guy, I immediately thought of Dobby from Harry Potter. If you've ever seen Harry Potter, then you know who Dobby is. And to me, if Dobby shriveled up and became mummified, this is pretty much what he would probably look like. Anyways, I just wanted to show you guys that to get your brains to start, get the creative juices flowing so we can start thinking outside of the box. Now, what do I really want to do here? I want to show you guys a picture. Oop, that's the last picture. I want to show you guys a picture of the Pleiades. This is a constellation called the Pleiades. If you look up in the sky, it's basically like a super tiny little dipper. It's like the little dipper. Anyways, so why do I think that this is important? Because I am very interested in words, etymology, languages, the origin of words, and how we got to where we are, and where words came from, and where languages came from. You see, I see all the languages that we have today, especially the English language, as having been broken down from an original source, getting more and more diverse through dialect and through accents. So every time the dialect and accent grew further and further apart and grew stronger and stronger in the way people were pronouncing different consonants and vowels, that we eventually get different words altogether, and that words slightly started changing meaning based on the cultures that had various dialects and accents. So the Pleiades is a perfect example of this. You see, the word Pleiades comes from this word, Pleiades. So if you've ever talked to anyone that's into like channeling and talking to the Pleiadians, those beings or whoever they are will tell you they're actually known as Pleiadians. Now, the reason for this is because the R in ancient languages like Phoenician and Paleo-Hebrew looks very similar, extremely similar to the letter D. So many ancient scholars actually confused, or they don't have to be scholars, but people who are reading this word, sometimes and more often than not confused the letter R with the letter D, so much so that the letter R was basically replaced with the letter D. Also, the letter I up here is extremely close. It's basically related to the letter J, and the I and the J both come from the letter Y or Yud. So it makes a Y sound. So Pleiades is at the bottom of this language pyramid, where we've made it a cowboy Americanized word from Pleiades, which I'm not even saying it like very accurately because I'm in a hurry right now. But I want to use this as a segue into our next word. This word is, do you guys know who this is? It's King what? King Tut, right? Or that's what we say. That's the cowboy way of saying this guy's name, King Tut. Now, his name obviously isn't Tut. That's a nickname that we've given to him. His name is actually Tutankhamun. Now, if I say Tutankhamun, that's also a very cowboy way of saying his entire name. His name is not really pronounced originally Tutankhamun, all right? Let me put it up here for you guys to read. Okay, Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun. Now, this is actually 3 words. This is the word Tut. Now, notice that King Tut, it sounds a lot different than Tutankhamun. So we have Tut and then Tut. Do you see how accent and dialect can all of a sudden start changing a word so that it sounds totally different and can also start taking on different meanings? So where does Tut come from? T-U-T comes from an ancient earlier word, T-H-O-T-H, Tot. Now, many of you will recognize Tot or Thoth, various ways to say his name, as an ancient Egyptian god, also an ancient Atlantean god. He was the god of wisdom, writing. He was in charge of writing all the knowledge of the world and keeping it safe for mankind, magic, and some other things. So, Tutankhamun's name is 3 gods, Tut, Ankh. Many of you know what the Ankh is, right? It's like the Egyptian cross with that circle on the top. Well, personally, my intuition is telling me that the word Ankh is closely related to the word Enki, Anki. Now, there are no vowels in ancient languages. The only semblance of a vowel sound is the ah sound. The ah sound of a vowel morphed into our A, E, I, O, and U vowels that we have today. So, Anki, all right, Ankh. Now, this is going to be important later on whenever I talk about Enki and his brother. And then the last word is Amun, which is where we get our word Amen. Amun basically means hidden or disappeared or gone. And it was used for a small handful of gods that took off and were either never seen again or came back later on. So, the hidden god, Enki, and Tot. Now, it is my speculation that King Tut, or King Tutankhamun, was named after, his name was given to him to give homage to his ancestors, to those who came before him. It was basically a way of saying, I am in lineage to these gods. Now, King Tut, if you used to watch the show Ancient Aliens, you'll probably be familiar with the next god, and he's King Tut's father. I don't know if he was a god per se, but he was related to the gods, supposedly. So, let's put his name down here. His name is Akhenaten, and that's our cowboy way of saying it. Okay, so first we have Ak, which I believe is related to the word Ankh, like we pointed out earlier, Ankh. Now we have En, which is actually On or On. On is the god of the sky, basically, the sky god, and father to Enki. And then Aten. Now, Aten, I think, has been confused throughout the years with Adon or Adon, as in Adonai, Aton. The T sound and the D sound are very similar. So, or we could also say, how about right? Remember, it's all the same vowel. Odin, right? Odin. So, once again, we have 3 gods' names giving homage to this particular person's lineage. So, I'm going to show you a picture of King Tut's father. This is Akhenaten. And we're going to move right on. This is Odin, okay? So Odin, I think that basically what I'm saying with relating all these gods together is that I think many of us could probably agree that we can see many of these puzzle pieces from various religions and histories as being the same pieces in some instances, especially when it comes to these ancient gods and their forefathers, the Titans, which is really what I'm about to get into. So here's the family tree of, look right here and you can see Enki. Oop, all right, well anyways, here's Enki, and here over here is his brother Enlil. Now, Enki and Enlil were brothers, basically battling it out for who would be in control of this particular realm that they came to. Now, Enki later sort of changed his title or his name to Yah. And I think Yah is closely related to the Yah of the Hebrews or the Yah of the Jews, Yahweh. And they just call him Yah for short. Enlil was the opposer to Yah or Enki. Enlil would be basically the Lucifer being, the opposer, the Satan being. All right? And I'm sort of relating these to various ideas and languages because I'm super short on time. But anyways, so we have Enki on one hand and we have Enlil on the other, basically fighting it out for this world. And all of these people up here are these titans that were their fathers and grandfathers that came before them. Now, Enki and Enlil were both known as being giants. But when I say giant, I mean like a small giant, okay? They were giant compared to us today. We're tiny compared to them. But their forefathers were the titans, beings who were titanic. Now, here's a picture right here of, we'll call this Enki, and he is creating a human being, right? And there's a whole story to that. And if you want to know more, feel free to ask me some questions or Google it and do some research. And you'll find that Enki was basically given the idea. Enlil sort of whispered it to this other female goddess, and she gave Enki this dream to race. Now, Enki, Enlil, and their whole entire family, some people call them the Anunnaki, or the beings that came down from the sky. All right. Now, especially in Zecharia Sitchin's books and novels, and not mainly his, but he was the main proponent of this theory. Now, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because a lot of people have found faults with Zecharia Sitchin. I definitely still keep what resonates, and I put the rest on the shelf. So what resonates with me is we have these titanic beings and these giants that came here to this realm to basically, well, Zecharia Sitchin says to mine for gold. I would rather say mine for resources, because it seems to me, and I've said this in many of my other videos, that our world was once a garden paradise. And if you've seen the No Forests on Flat Earth video, if you haven't, I recommend checking it out. No Forests on Flat Earth. Basically, it puts forth the idea that these mesas that we have all over our world were once giant, huge trees. Now, by extension, if the world was filled with huge, giant trees that reached way up into the heavens and up into the sky, it stands to reason that there probably were also ancient giant beings that lived right along with ancient giant plant forms. Now, I say plant forms loosely because this was, in my opinion, I speculate that this was more of a silica-based world that was much different from our world today. So when I say trees, they may be similar to our trees and our concept of a tree today, just like when I say being, it may be similar to what you see in front of you, this human being, but it could also be very different, just having the appearance of these things. So I speculate, and I've put forth throughout many of my videos, that we lived in a world a long time ago before these gods came, before these titans especially came to this realm, that we were a realm full of amazing resources, that there was no sun, there was no moon, and that our world may have been, I think, a bioluminescent world, a place that was lit up all by itself. Kind of like in the movie Avatar, where you see all the trees and everything, they're basically giving forth their own light. And there was no need for this artificial light. So I put forth that these giant beings, these titanic beings, did come here, possibly, to mine for resources, to excavate our world. And that as this happened, they were all battling for who would be in charge and who would get to rule, especially as other beings were created. And it may be that somewhere in there, we have other types of beings, just like our guy at the beginning here. This world may have had elves and gnomes and dwarven beings all coexisting here, and then humans, basically came towards the end. Okay, so I just wanted to add a PS to this video. There's a few more things that I wanted to say that I've just remembered that I left out. So after Enki and Enlil and the progeny of giants and titans came here with the aim to basically scrape apart our realm that we live in and to tear down our paradise that once existed in order to mine it for its resources. It seems to me, and I speculate, that they probably took those resources to the outer edges to cross over into their own realms and to take them basically home to where they live, which is in Norse mythology known as Jotunheim, or the land of the giants. Now, I think that there are lands outside of this flat earth realm that we live in. I think that there are lands beyond the Antarctic, and that many of those lands may in fact be still inhabited today by titanic beings. I don't mean the little giants, I mean the titanic ones, like that are bigger than our mountains that we have here. So, after they scraped out our realm and after they fought over who would, rule supreme over this realm and who got credit for what and who would get what when they go back, it seems to me that some of them, a small amount of them, probably stayed in order to watch over things here. Many of them probably died throughout the course of time and events, and that others retreated back out towards Antarctica to cross back over into their own realms, to go home basically, and to spend the next few thousand years rebuilding or building whatever they like at their own places. Perhaps these resources were a source of food to them, and also perhaps it was resources in order to build in the same way that we build today, making buildings and vehicles and things of that nature. So, after they scraped out our realm, I postulate and speculate that they went back across over the ice barrier. This is the ice wall. Many flat earthers are familiar with this. This is basically the barrier that keeps us from going any further. Now, were we to traverse the ice wall, climb up it, and keep going, I think we would reach the real barrier, which is the dome that I think was put in place. Now, if there is or if there's not a dome, it seems to me that there's definitely a barrier of some sort, keeping other beings from entering in, or more importantly, keeping us from leaving. So, it seems to me that the giants left outside of our realm. They took their stuff back home, and I think they probably would be there now. They're at home doing their giant thing, building their giant stuff with their own families. Now, why do I think this is important? Well, because Antarctica has been it's been taboo to really talk about it, to go there. And now that there's this enlightenment period, there's this awakening period, many people are talking about actually making trips to Antarctica, which it seems to me has been an eye-opener to the powers that once were. And they're like, oh man, so now we're not allowed to go to Antarctica. Now there's a ban for anyone even going near Antarctica. Why? And why are we not allowed to go there? And why are all of these famous people going to Antarctica, like John Kerry and Buzz Aldrin and the Pope and all these other prominent players in the game? Well, here's my speculation, my theory on the subject. I think that there are doorways intermittently around this ice ring, or around the dome, or around the barrier of our little particular realm that we live on. And I think that those doorways are heavily guarded by the powers that be that were left here in order to control and maintain this realm the way that they would like to see it maintained. Now, I think that the powers that were, when I say that, I mean like, our governments and the Illuminati, etc. I think that they go to the outer edges of Antarctica, to these places where there may be some sort of gates or portals where other beings could come in and where they possibly might be able to leave. I'm not totally sure if they can leave or if other beings can get in, but at the very least it seems to me like there may be some sort of communication going on between these ancient titans of old and the leaders that lead our world today. And it may in fact be, negotiations or discussions about, things that are to come. A lot of us want to leave. We want to go outside of this realm. We want to go explore and see if there is other garden paradises that have not been torn down by these titans. And as you can see here, every time I think about the titans, I keep running into them being sort of imagined as being made of rock or crystalline type titans. This is obviously the rock biter, and this is a very kid-friendly version of what some of these titanic giants may look like in other realms. And I say this because I think that they came from a Silica age. At least here, it once was a Silica age here. It may still be a Silica age outside of this realm, in other lands and other realms. So perhaps these beings are more rockbiter than we think. This particular picture right here comes from The Lord of the Rings, where the mountains themselves sort of rose up and started fighting one another, and the mountains were these rock giants. And I just find it really interesting, especially in light of the mud fossils, that various people are looking into. There's a thing called mud fossils where they say that these giants of old, not the giants, but mostly the titans of old were made of some sort of structure that when they died, or when they, I think personally, when they probably interacted with certain elements here, especially the sun and the waters and the flood, that it probably killed them and solidified their body into stone as we know it today. And it may be that the world that was scraped out and all that debris that was pushed into lines may have become mountains. And maybe some of those ancient titans of old actually died, and we see their remnants here and there in the form of giant rock displays that we take for granted now. But anyways, so my main theory about this is that yes, I think titans, the fathers of the giants, the larger version of the giants, once existed. I think that they helped to create the ancient world that we probably once lived in. And I think that they helped to destroy that ancient world. I think that they fought amongst themselves as to the ethics behind this, and their codes of morality that they had that differed from one another. I think that they gave birth to the giants, and that life got smaller and smaller and smaller at the very least on this realm. And so we start off with the titans, who are the largest of all, and then the giants, and then the demigods, and then and it keeps smaller and smaller and smaller until you have basically humans, or like that little tiny mummy guy I've shown you. But anything is possible in this world that we live in, within all the various realms. We could see all types of life forms. So I think we should open our eyes and open our minds and start thinking outside of the box to take back some of these puzzle pieces that we call fantasy and fiction and incorporate them into information that we've already gleaned from what we've learned so far in this world. And we can use our imaginations to speculate on the information, to put those pieces back together and to make a more complete picture. So, last thing I wanted to say is that why do I think it's important that there may be other beings that live outside of this realm, and that our leaders may be in communication with them? Well, it seems to me that we're being set up for some sort of a scenario where there's an invasion, or if not an invasion, some of these beings coming back, because they may have way longer lifespans than we have. So I think it's highly possible that either the dome will open up, or the barriers will be let down, or that these ancient beings will come back. And we have the technology today to like basically to fight against them, possibly and potentially. And it may be possible that they may be afraid of coming back here based on our weaponry that we have now, because we might be able to actually like, you know, keep them out. And when I say we, I mean the powers that are in charge of this plane. They might want to keep staying in charge. And if a huge titanic being or a bunch of them come back, the Illuminati that rule this realm, they're not going to be in charge anymore. You know what I mean? So they're probably working out the finer details before something like this is to occur. And last thing before I go, I just wanted to also correlate Enki and Enlil, the Anunnaki giant beings, sons of the Titans. I wanted to correlate them as in Zecharia Sitchin's books, he says that all these alien type beings, and I don't think they're aliens, I just think they're alien to this realm. I think they come from other realms outside of this one. So to us, they would be alien. But he says they come from a place called Nibiru. Now, everyone looks at the sky and they're waiting for the planet Nibiru to come. I don't think Nibiru is a planet. I think it is a plane of existence. I think it is another realm. Actually, I really don't think that that is the name, the native name of the home realm that these beings all come from. Nibiru has been translated to mean place of the crossing, or the letter N. Sorry, my medicine's kicking in right now. The letter N basically in Phoenician means life, okay? So life, and then the word Iber, which means to cross, and then U, which means of. So Nibiru, Nibiru, means life or beings that crossed over. So here's my speculation on where these beings come from. They come from places where they crossed over from their realm into our realm. They are ones of crossing. They are those of the crossing over. They have crossed over into our realm. And ancient gods and beings like Marduk or Enki, whose name is also Yah or Yahweh, they created little beings. It's said that they created little worker beings to finish mining up this realm for them, and that those beings that Yah made or Enki made were basically his followers, and they were known as the Iberu, the Iberu, or those of Nibiru, right? Those of the crossing, the ones that come from the beings that crossed over, the Iberu or the Hebrew.